Good afternoon and welcome to today's performance of Jane the Queen at Hanover Presbyterian Church. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful All Saints Day. We remind you at this time to please silence all electronic devices and kindly ask to hold your applause until the end of the song cycle. There are 9 movements, so once we get done 9, then we can applaud. Today's performance will be followed by a short Q&A and a reception in the social hall behind the sanctuary. To set the stage for today's program, we will begin with a 3-minute video. Again, welcome and enjoy Jane the Queen.
England, 1553. The young king is dying. Edward VI, the only surviving son of Henry VIII, has been on the throne for 7 years. He rules with the help of his Privy Council, led by the ambitious and unpopular John Dudley, Duke of Northumberland. The Tudors are once again in a succession crisis for want of a male heir. King Edward is unmarried and childless. He needs to name a successor who is male, Protestant, and legitimate, and time is running out. Edward has 2 half-sisters, Mary and Elizabeth, and though unfortunately female, they are next in line according to Henry VIII's will. However, they pose a series of problems. Mary is Catholic and would undo decades of religious reform. Elizabeth, a Protestant, is the daughter of the notorious Anne Boleyn. They are both technically illegitimate by the fates of their mothers, and they are both expected to marry princes from the continent. To keep his kingdom out of the hands of foreigners and papists, Edward looks to his Protestant cousins of the venerable House of Grey and any male children they would have. As great-grandchildren of Henry VII, they are Henry VIII's great-nieces, distantly in line for the throne, but not realistically expecting to ascend. In his device for the succession, King Edward lays out his plan to exclude his half-sisters and pass his throne directly to the male children of his eldest Grey cousin, Lady Jane, a renowned scholar by age 16 and a devoted Protestant. Jane has recently been married to Lord Guilford Dudley, son of the Duke of Northumberland. It is an alliance that is interestingly timed and much more advantageous for the Dudleys. Still, as a Protestant and an Englishman, Guilford is suitable. King Edward hopes the marriage will yield a son quickly. But by June 1553, his health has rapidly deteriorated, and there is no time to wait for a male heir. He amends his device for the succession, adding 2 words that will change the course of history. Instead of it reading, "To the Lady Jane's heirs male," Edward adds the words, "and her," meaning the throne will now pass to the Lady Jane and her heirs male. On July 6th, King Edward dies. The unsuspecting Lady Jane will become England's first queen regnant.
of my body before my death, to the Lady Jane's Ismail. My studies were interrupted with news of his health, but with no hope of saving his life. No hope, no hope. Now I must go to the tower, for he has named me as his heir. For lack of issue of my body before my death, to the Lady Jane and her heirs male. Nurses, nurses, the crown is not my right and pleaseth me not. The Lady Mary is the rightful heir. I plead with you, good sirs, I beg you. Oh God, I humbly pray and beseech you, if this is rightly and lawfully mine, please grant me such grace and spirit to govern it to your glory and service, and to the advantage of this realm. Amen. sword. When next I emerge and through the streets I am led, to my throne I will walk, and the crown on my head. Here is the crown of your realm, madam. Try it, see if it becomes you. A similar crown will be made to fit your husband, because a king deserves a crown. A king deserves a crown. A woman will not exercise authority over a man. Rather she is to remain quiet. What does it say of a queen? Oh God, if this isn't rightly and lawfully mine. Oh no, I see now, I see now. Oh, do not doubt me, my lords, I am mere woman no longer. Edward left his crown to me and trusted it to me. King by the grace of God, Queen of England, France, and Ireland, defender of the faith and of the Church of England. My husband will never be king. The royal blood is mine. He may rule over his wife, but he will sit beneath his queen, walk behind his queen, bow to his queen. Obey them who rule over you, for they keep watch over your souls. My dear, noble lords, having entered into our rightful possession of this kingdom, I call upon you to defend our just title and to disturb, repel, and resist the untrue claim of Lady Mary, the bastard daughter of our dearest great-uncle Henry, of famous memory. I am assured in the goodness of God that you owe your duty to us, your sovereign lady, who means to preserve this crown of England in the royal blood, and out of the hands of strangers and papists. A mighty fortress is our God. In thee, O Lord, I put my trust. Deliver me, save me from the violence of all foreign or inward enemies. Signed, Jane the Queen. could barely speak. He pulled down the royal canopy and told me I am no longer queen. I must put off my royal robes and be content with private life. I willingly give up something I never sought. The crown is not my right and pleaseth me not. May the new queen have mercy on us all. May I go home risk my immortal soul to spare me the pain of the flesh. My soul is happy to abandon this darkness and ascend into the My dear sister, Catherine, I have sent you a book which shall lead you to the path of eternal joy. It will teach you to live and earn you to die, that you put your trust only in God, in whom, even in death, there is life. Your loving sister, Jane Dudley. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Um,
Questions?
Thank you so much for going on this journey with us. It's wonderful to share this incredible story with more and more people, with new audiences. This is a person who needs to be talked about more, and we're learning new things about her all the time. Of course. And we're so thankful to be here today at Hanover, and thank you so much to Twyla and to Ellen and to Pastor Stephanie. Thank you for having us here. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And this is microphone? Okay.
Sure.
Okay, use microphone. Okay. Oh, I don't know how to do this. I'm a classical singer. Can you do that?
Be gentle.
Yeah, well, you hold it and I'll do
Sure.
We wanted to have the opportunity to talk to you about peace. Thank you. That Jonathan composed. We started working on it during the pandemic, and I started reading and writing, and I happened to be married to a composer and a wonderful pianist, and Jonathan.
With not much else going on at the time.
Yeah. And Jonathan thankfully said that he would compose it, and the manuscript that I turned over to him, it's not that like it was, poetry and even verses. It was a lot of. I had compiled each movement that you see out of historic letters, things that she wrote, things that people wrote about her, and then tied in verses from the Bible. She was extremely religious. And then also tied in quotes to set up each one by Plato, which was one of her favorite authors. Her favorite book was Phaedo by Plato. And it's incredibly amazing how apropos it is to our times that we're living in now, and also how much her religious studies and her philosophical studies intertwined. I found that really, really interesting when also reading Greek philosophy. But
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, that back then there wasn't this divide between like pagan philosophy and Christian thought. Because you could read everything.
And you had to be,
in
if you were a
Greek.
scholar, you had to
Right.
read the
Right.
Greek philosophers.
Which she
and
did.
in Greek, if you know. But it's a wonderful story, and we wanted to give you the opportunity to ask questions or comment, be able to speak to a living composer, because usually things that we sing, you can't speak to Mozart and say, hey, what were you thinking there? Or about Jane or her family or anything. Does anyone have any questions? Sure. a big reader of biographies. I love reading historic biographies, and I end up sort of, reading one, and then I'm like, oh, well, the person they mention here is interesting, and then I bounce off and, read about another person. And I've always been very interested in British royal history from the war, before the War of the Roses, up through the Elizabethan and the Stuarts. And it was during the pandemic that I watched a documentary. There's a historian I really, really like, who I noted in there. Her name is Helen Castor, and she did an amazing documentary called England's Forgotten Queen. And I love Helen Castor, and I've read some other of her books, so I'm like, oh, I'm gonna watch this. And I just could not believe, I had heard of Jane Grey, the 9 Days Queen. I saw her mentioned at the Tower of London forever ago and didn't know who she was, but I could not believe these teeny tiny moments in history that set Jane up not only to become queen, but also to be executed, and that we don't talk about this. And when we have the reception, there's actually a tea tray that I made, like one does, on the table with a group of playing cards, which is where we got the idea for the poster and the hero image that we have on everything being a playing card, because in the official deck of cards of royalty of England, Jane is not in there, and that really bugs me. So we wanted her story to be told. I just thought, this is incredible. We want to do meaningful work. We want to tell meaningful stories and give voices to people like her, and she left writing behind on purpose.
So much.
That she knew would be read later.
I think it's funny too that we're probably the first generation of creatives to be like, I was watching YouTube, I was down a historical rabbit hole, and I was like, somebody should write a song cycle about this.
And to tie it back together in maybe an older art form, but to have her story be told, and it's not even because the writing is necessarily poetic, it's just, this is the way that I know best and that you know best to bring a character to people. Mm-hmm. So I hope that answers your question. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Yeah. Right. That's a great question. So the question is why...
It's her dad's fault.
It's kind of her dad's fault.
Yeah.
Well, it's a few people's fault. So the question was, why was she still considered a threat, and why did she have to be executed? And so when Mary I, who we now call Bloody Mary, came to the throne, she at first said that she would be merciful to Jane. Basically, people were telling her, stay out of the way, just stay under house arrest. At some point, you'll be able to just go retire to some country estate and just keep your head down. She also had two sisters, though. So she had a mother living who was also in line for the throne, but was skipped on purpose because she was no longer of childbearing age. Mm-hmm. There's Jane.
Because the original plan was a gray cousin who's a male heir, but all they had were daughters. So that was one thing that was commented on by onlookers at the time. Mm-hmm. So why is this girl being fought like her mother, her living mother, who is
with her and
before
carrying
her in the
her
succession,
train.
Is carrying her train.
And they knew who her mother was, because her mother was the granddaughter of Henry VIII's favorite sister. Mm-hmm. So everybody knew, like, Frances Grey, her maiden name Frances Brandon, it should have been her first. So people started to think something funny is going on here.
Yeah,
but
it's kind of like, we need a male heir, and your mom can't have kids anymore. So we're going to make you the queen, and then we're going to kill you. Sorry.
Well, and what they were hoping was that Jane would have male children, because at that time, all the rulers were the kings. There were a lot of very powerful queen consorts, but no one was fully in charge.
Queen regnant.
Yeah. So Queen Mary, she at first was like, well, you all are used to being Protestant, or they call it the Reformed religion. I'll let it be for a little bit. I'm going to keep being Catholic. I'm not going to bother you. Then very quickly she changed, because she needed to marry somebody quickly Mary was 37 when she came to the throne. She needed to get married, I know, but she needed to get married and have kids fast. And, because time was really running out for her. And as you know, they would marry people to other powerful princes from Europe to make alliances. They needed an alliance with Spain. She was going to marry Philip of Spain. And the Spanish, who were a Catholic nation, were like, you want, our prince, and you want our money and like our ships and everything. You got to make everything Catholic again, which she was going to do anyway. And also, who are these gray girls that are still alive? And Mary was like, I'm not killing my cousin. I'm not. And they kept pushing and pushing and basically dangling the marriage in front of her and saying, if you want this marriage to happen, she's got to go. Because there still could be people who are like, I don't want to be Catholic. I don't want Mary to make me do what I don't want to do. Bring Jane back. Because that also was Edward's dying wishes. So, so the marriage went through, and she decided we have to get rid of Jane, her husband Guilford, even though he really didn't do anything. He was just a part of it. Jane's father.
Because he was part of the rebellion that rose up against them. That was
Thank
the
you.
missing part.
Good point.
Yeah.
There was also, this is
so
the
there was
other
a
part.
rebellion, her father joined it. And so
Yes.
once that happened, it was like, okay, well, now there's no choice, but we
If
have
you
to,
ever
we
heard
have to
of
get rid of you.
Wyatt's Rebellion, Wyatt's Rebellion was a group of people who were like, no, you can't make us go back to being Catholic. We want the Reformed religion that our beloved Henry VIII put in place and that Edward VI put in place. That's what we want. And Jane's father stupidly joined that rebellion
So they all
and
had
got
to die.
caught.
Yeah.
And so that pushed it over the edge. They were like, look, and even her dad is causing a fuss. If they had all just kept their heads down and been quiet, it might have been okay. Her mother ended up living and remarrying. Her mom kind of got out of jail free there. But yeah, that's why. Good question. Any other questions? Hi, Twilight.
Isn't it incredible that Jane had the strength to be able to say, I'm not going to make you the king,
Yeah.
as a 16-year-old?
Yes.
I think that's a really amazing attribute of hers, because she was being forced to do something she really didn't ask for,
Right.
and she didn't want to do, but she had the ability in that moment to say, no, I'll make you do it, but you're not going to be a king, you're going to bow to me.
Exactly. And she thought, I don't want to do this, but if I have to do this, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability, and I'm going to do what Edward entrusted me to do, which is to protect our kingdom, protect this religion that it was actually Edward VI that did a lot of the religious reform that we attribute to Henry VIII. Henry VIII started it, but it was really like Catholic light. It was like the Diet Coke of Catholic at that time. Edward was like, made a ton and introduced the Book of Common Prayer in English. Oh my goodness, people were allowed to read the Bible. And, she thought, okay, fine, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it the way that he wanted. And that means I'm the royal blood. The Dudleys were like new money. They were very powerful, but they were not really trusted because they didn't have a long, long line of royal lineage. The only royal blood there was Jane's. And so she needed to keep it away from the Dudleys. And she also didn't like them. So she knew what they were up to.
It's a good point, too, that one of the ways it looks, like the video says, it's kind of interestingly timed that the protector of the realm there, John Dudley, is like, oh, you're going to be dying little King Edward wants Jane to be queen, and just let me marry my son to her.
Marry my son.
But the fact that she wouldn't make him king kind of goes against that idea that it was actually John Dudley who was puppeteering everything.
Well, and they were furious with her. So Jane's in-laws, so Guilford, Jane in the approximately 10 days, or 13 days, sorry, about 2 weeks from the time that she found out that she was queen to the time when she was not queen anymore. We say 9, but that was from when she was announced. But Jane would show up at like a council meeting, and Guilford was sitting in her seat. So she immediately was like, no, this isn't good. She immediately saw what was going on, that this was a power grab, and she needed to keep that from happening. And also, gosh, what was I gonna add there? I lost my train of thought, but
Okay.
yeah, that's okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I know what I was going to say, sorry. And Jane's, I'm so sorry. Jane's in-laws were furious, and Guilford was furious, and her in-laws said, okay, unless you make him king, I'll just put this gently, he will no longer come to your chamber. And she was like, okay, that's fine. But
oh no!
yeah, 'cause she's like, I don't like this guy anyway. But
Anything but that.
But they were like, if you want royal heirs, which
Yeah.
if she had remained queen, they needed heirs. So yes, that was the other thing. Sorry about that. What was your question, ma'am?
I was going to ask, what happened to your sisters?
That's a great question, and at least one other song cycle could be written about them. So her next sister in line, Catherine, that we referenced and that she left that letter to, Catherine ended up, and her younger sister Mary ended up being in the retinue for Mary I. Mary kind of forgave them, let them come to court. Better keep your enemies close, right? And so they were ladies in waiting, just being quiet. Mary I was only on the throne for 5 years, and then she died. And then Elizabeth I ascended, turned everything back to Protestant or Church of England and more religious tolerance. And that's when things kind of got bad, because Catherine came of age. The marriage that she had been promised when Jane was queen just evaporated. And then, but she secretly fell in love with and married Lord Hertford, and
Lord what?
Hertford. I think it was Hertford. But
Hertford.
I forget if it's Hertford or Hertford. But anyway, they got married. They had a witness. They had a priest. But somehow, very strangely, the witness disappeared, the priest disappeared, the paperwork disappeared, and so they were secretly married, but also they made the big mistake of not getting the permission of the sovereign. And Elizabeth was furious at them, locks Catherine in the Tower of London, locks her husband in the Tower of London, not the nice part. I mean, they were in royal prison cells, so they weren't awful, but separated them immediately. Catherine's pregnant. She gets pregnant, she has a son, which makes Elizabeth really angry. And then she, while in the Tower of London, gets pregnant again because the guards were nice and let this young couple see each other.
That's not what I thought you
no,
meant.
not like that. But
Right.
then
Guards
let them
were
see
real
each
nice.
other.
Yeah.
And so she had two children in the Tower of London, but they separated them, and they never lived together again as husband and wife. Catherine was unfortunately, sent off to live with someone in, a country estate, and died of depression, very, very young. The youngest sister, Mary, you would think she would learn something, but she did sort of a similar thing. She fell in love with the man who was the head of Elizabeth's security. His name was Thomas Keyes, and he was a big, gigantic man, and Mary was, they think she might have actually been a little person. She was under 5 feet tall, she was really tiny, and they fell in love, and she thought, I'm nobody. I'm just quietly doing my thing. And they got married quietly, and she became stepmother to his children because his wife had died. And same thing, Elizabeth's furious, she separates them, she throws her husband in the Fleet prison, and he eventually comes out but dies from having caught a bunch of diseases and stuff while he was in there. And Mary did not live a long life after that. So it's not good. I would love to say that they got through. Her mother remarried, married just someone who wasn't a prince or anything, someone she loved. I believe that she died from complications of childbirth a little bit while later, but she she did okay from the deal. She's the one person in the family that did all right. So
Reminds me of a point that I was thinking about throughout this process too, that is like, you know, John Dudley might have been a bit of a kingmaker and manipulative and whatever, but he did a pretty good job. And now we're sort of past this idea of the divine right of kings, right? I mean, the Tudors were basically warlords anyway to begin with. And so thinking of this from my perspective, I was thinking, I mean, Jane would have been a good queen probably, because what we got after her was Bloody Mary,
Yeah.
and then Elizabeth, and then you have all the sea dogs and the wars with the Spanish and everything, and Jane was apparently brilliant and also queen, and then Mary was like, I'm Henry VIII's daughter, and everything. And also, ironically, right, they were all women. So like they need a male heir, and then Edward dies, and then it's
Just weren't
Mary and Elizabeth,
Yeah.
and then
Mary had no children, Elizabeth had no children, and it had to go to the son of the Scottish king, so King James the Sixth
James the
of
Sixth
Scotland
and
and James the First of England.
Yeah.
I
Are
saw-
there any other
Yeah, I
questions?
saw a couple other hands. Yes,
Yes.
hi. That's
Yeah,
a great question.
Patience. No, I'm
yeah.
just,
Well,
but
Yeah.
yeah, no, there's a lot of editing, and Paige researched so brilliantly and thoroughly, and so we were presented with several different ways in which we could structure the piece, and there were many spirited conversations in our kitchen over it, and but we've had the good fortune of being able to keep our heads cool and talk through creative differences that come up, and we end up being able to have really like rational convos about what we think a good choice would be. We arrived at the idea of bookending the piece with the letter because Paige is really passionate about historical accuracy, and we have all these important characters in the story, but when you're writing a song cycle, it's like, how do you tell, you know, we need to have the device for the succession in there, so there should be Edward, like, there's a really
How do we do
neat-
it without these other characters?
Yeah, and
speaking,
she
you know?
loved to debate this priest that Mary sent her when she was in prison, and he went with her to her execution, and he said prayers over her in Latin, and she said her prayers in English. And we wanted something like that, and we were thinking, oh, well, will I be the priest singing at the piano? And we ended up saying that, okay, well, if we create this framing device where it's all kind of her telling her sister what's happened to her, then we can have her narrative throughout and sort of imitate her dresser and things like that.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, it started with a lot of reading, and starting to, I knew I wanted to do 9 movements. That's a little bit cheeky, but I wanted to divide it into 9, and then you think, okay, well, where do we start? And because, well, then I was looking at what was available, what information is available. The letter that she wrote to her sister before she died, and then also she wrote a lot of letters to scholars around Europe and her tutor, who she loved. And this letter that she wrote to her tutor about how, you know, my whole family loves going out and hunting, and they love doing sports outside, and I'm like sitting looking out the window, and I don't want to do any of that. I like to sit and read. And we have that letter. So then I started to zero in on, okay, it's 9, what are we gonna include in those 9? I wanna include something about before she was queen. And I wanted to go through to her execution. I wanted to do her entire scaffold piece. That's
the
that's
whole
a
thing,
that's
yeah.
a
She wanted
portion
to-
of her actual speech from the
Yeah.
scaffold. I wanted to include her interaction with the executioner, where he begs her forgiveness and tries to help her with her gloves and stuff, and she's like, "Get off me!" And but in a nice way. But there were so many things. So we started with fitting tons and tons of information into these 9 movements, and then cutting and cutting and cutting and cutting. And when Jonathan came up with this idea to bookend it, at first I was hesitant because I was like, but I wanted it to be in order historically. So if we start with the letter and end with the letter, that's not in order. But very quickly I came around because he's like, we need a framing device. I'm trying to find a way to take all of this information, and some of it I had already written in verse form, but rightly, we need to find a way to make this a piece, like one piece that has an arc and a beginning and an end. So a lot of cutting, but the movements actually came pretty easily. I knew I wanted the second one to be called "and her," which is just because it's that brilliant 2 words that were added that made her queen. That just blew my mind. Yeah. And Edward's actual words. As much as we could, the more that I found that were her actual words, that helped to feed into each movement and shape what are we going to cover, like what do we have the most information about. And then we filled in the gaps with the prayer that comes back a couple of times, the, "Oh God, I humbly beg and beseech you." She wrote that not as a prayer, but it was part of a letter that she wrote to Mary I, a long letter, sort of explaining, this is what happened. Like, I beg your forgiveness. This is everything that happened. And so I extracted that and made it a prayer, because she said, when they told me I was queen, I prayed to God, and I said, "God, I humbly pray and beseech thee." And we also took letters that other people wrote who witnessed her first procession on the Thames, and turned them around and made them sort of first person, or added them in just as a commentary. So it really,
And back to our collaboration, a lot of times, we wrote it when we still lived in New York. We had a 1-bedroom apartment in Washington Heights, and I had an electric piano with headphones. So for some reason, I do a lot of my best work when I first wake up in the morning. I don't know. I grew up on a farm, it's probably that. Yeah. But I would be writing, and Paige knew that if when she woke up and I was like misty, that it was like a good day, like, that I'd come up with something pretty good.
Yeah.
And throughout, when we got it ready for performance and everything, we would take each other's advice a little bit. If Paige had a comment about certain melodic things, I would occasionally, bow to her for that. And then when I had ideas about lyrics, she would occasionally bow to me on that. So
I had ideas about the ebb and flow of it, and because I'm a musician, but I'm not a composer, and so I was trying to find a way to communicate how I wanted it to sound. And Jonathan not only did just such an incredible job with these themes that show up and then come back to inform you about what's happening. And it was really born out of that, but also interpreting what I was trying to get across.
Yeah, I think it helps too to be an actor with that stuff when you're writing music, because I think, well, so just like one example there, like at the end when she's like, "Trust not that the tenderness of your age will lengthen your life." She's delivering that straightforward, but the piano's like, "Honor your father and mother," as just a little bit of like because that's what kind of got me into this mess, which is part of the letter. She actually wrote to her father that this kind of nasty letter, like, "It's your fault that I'm dying,"
she did.
Basically, that we chose not to include because we want to tell, you can't include everything, but the narrative we're trying to tell is that she did very bravely face her fate. And so that was kind of a nasty gram to leave out. But the idea of like, she has a sense of irony about it even a little bit, even though she is incredibly pious.
Yeah. Well, and the major part of the collaboration too was that Jonathan has this incredible ability to write what emotions sound like.
Oh, thanks.
And that is amazing, because it is such an emotionally fueled piece, and there's so much to get across. And also he learned a ton about this by me reading and looking up and going, "Oh my God, I just learned this," blah, 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 and talking about it. But because he wasn't as personally involved with this person as I was, he was able to look at it and discern what was going to work and what wasn't. And that really
Yeah.
helped a lot. And to edit
Yeah.
edit things down. Like the first draft I gave to you, I was like, it's done. And it was not done.
No, yeah. Well, because my background, like we're both from operatic backgrounds, but I've done a lot of like new musicals, so I have an eye for pacing a bit,
Yes.
and so that's where that's a fine line. And even in performing this piece, like there's a fine line, because if you like, and we've talked about this a lot because we both feel very, very strongly about this piece, and we both love it, and it both makes us emotional still.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
But if she's all broken up, then you'll feel sorry for her.
Right.
And sort of Jane, like whoever's playing Jane gives the audience permission on how they should feel. And
Right.
so that was the other part
was
of the
another thing.
collaboration, is that we're kind of also co-directors of the
Yeah.
the show, if you will.
Because I was like, no, we need the entire scaffold speech because that's what she said,
Right.
and we need to say everything. And he's just like,
As I said, there was a lot of editing in the
because
process.
like, he kept reminding me, it's enough. You don't want to keep
Right.
dragging people.
You don't want to
through
torture
it and
people with
torture
how
people
sad
with,
it is.
with
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Well, and also, even if just like you go to fortissimo too many times, it's like,
Right. We need an
then
ebb
it
and
starts
flow.
to feel samey. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey.
I thought it was wonderful when you look at it, because the Jane that we meet in the beginning, at least to me, wasn't the same Jane at the end when I heard it again.
Yes.
I was like, oh wow, it did something more.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Because you heard the themes coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And something different, because you had heard that story.
Yes.
And by the time that last line of even in death there is life, that was a transporting line.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
very
And
much.
that is what she said.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, the Learn You to Die was the first thing I was like, oh wow.
yeah.
She wrote this girl wrote Learn You to Die.
Yeah.
And I sat down at the piano and improvised that theme. And
Yeah.
and so throughout the whole piece, da ya da da ya da da da.
It comes back.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's funny. Like I would rather like say that than write it, because I don't want to be like, it's inspired and I'm a mere conduit for such, But
But it is.
But
That's how it
something
happens.
self-deprecating I will share though is that I originally wrote "Honor Thy Father and Mother." One thing that I've danced with is like, I want it to seem like legitimate. I don't want it to seem too
Oh yeah.
too old-fashioned, too tonal, too diatonic. These things we get self-conscious about in music, that it's all been done, it's been heard. And I kind of shrugged that off during COVID. I was like, I don't know if the world's gonna continue. I'm just gonna write what I want to write.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to do a good job, but I'm not trying to prove anything anymore. But I had like a spookier idea for honor thy father and mother.
Yeah.
And I remembered that, whoops, that's the final boss music for Super Mario Brothers 2. And I should avoid that. His name was Wart. And I was like, oh no. Again, like this generation, right? I'm
Yeah.
probably the first generation of composers that's like,
Oh, wow.
uh-oh,
Yeah.
I better not write Super Mario Brothers music.
Yeah.
When
And
I'm like influenced by video games, but it's true.
There's
It's
a lot of
piece
amazing
of
video game
media
music.
well, now there is,
Now there
yeah.
is.
I mean, Mario Brothers, right? I mean,
yeah.
it's so recognizable.
Yeah.
But not necessarily.
That. Wow.
And
See, I'm reminded of a new thing.
that'll be in my head.
Forever.
Yep.
One
Till
other thing I wanted
tomorrow's
to
even song.
one other thing I wanted to bring up was in the structure in movement 5, when which is mostly spoken. When I saw, there's actually this letter, and it was something I saw in the documentary first. There is the letter that she, dictated to people, and that was being copied and sent out to every lord, because at the time, lords on their manors, you would write to them and be like, I need soldiers, get your people together, get your equipment together, and it was their responsibility to comply. And so she was sending out this letter and signed it Jane the Queen, and spelled it that way. That's her handwriting that's on the program. And I just thought it was incredible, but I was like, how do we do this? And the image I had in my head was actually Kenneth Branagh in Henry V, you know, just like standing on the battlefield. And I love that Kenneth Branagh is just like, hold on to your hats, I'm doing this whole speech, and you're gonna listen to me. And it's just, but it's this amazing, like, so trying to tell Jonathan, I'm like, I want it to sound like battle cry, I want it to sound like marching, I would like, blah, and then he came up with this, and then actually just saying the letter, so that it's her voice going out to all of these people, asking for their support, but also interspersed, and I am not a scholar of the Bible, so I really had to look and read into the Bible as you know, study literature to understand better what Jane was reading, and what might at those times helped her get through, and that might, you know, a mighty fortress is our God, you know, my sword, my shield, and later on, the men of war fled by night through the gates down the walls. It's just like, that is exactly what they did to her. You know, her advisors were all sneaking out and going and declaring Mary as queen. All of the people who made Jane queen left, and most of them did not even say goodbye to her. They just saw which way the wind was blowing, and they snuck out. And it's just incredible. So once I was able to weave in these Bible verses that maybe she was reading them at the time, maybe not, but maybe they were things that were in her head that helped to support her, and that really gave, you know, sort of a ballast to the piece itself, to know that, you know, these are things that she was probably reading and maybe was depending on to you know, to strengthen her. So, but yeah, just after the first time that we did the piece was in February of 2024. So the goal was, because Jane died in 1554, we wanted it finished and on its feet and performed by February of 2024. And we did it in Washington, D.C. at our friend's beautiful home. We had about 30, 40 people, like a parlor performance, to share it for the first time. And a friend of mine who's a conductor, led the Q&A afterwards, and she was like, what about that movement 5? That was hot. But it felt really, really cool and powerful.
Yeah, well, and a change just today that Paige came up with was to say, my dear sister, Catherine.
At the end,
before we sing. I had that as sort of wretched, my dear sister, Catherine. But that was a great idea. We tried it a few different ways, and so it's still evolving.
Yeah. And we're
but
learning things.
Shall we continue the conversation over some cider and cookies?
Something that they want to add, or we'll be out there and we can all chat and say hello. Yeah.
If you had questions too embarrassing to ask,
yeah,
we'll be there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you.